All right. Thank you, Russ, and congratulations, everybody, on an awesome January. And I was especially impressed by some of those numbers, given that January was a little bit slow. And we're going to dive into some of those numbers and take a look at what happened last month and make some predictions about going forward. Number one, I've shown this before, but there is a huge penalty for listings that have to reduce their price. This is something that probably should be shown in every listing appointment this spring. There is a 6.5% difference between the median net close price and original list price for listings that didn't have a reduction and ones that did. 6.5%. If we think about the average or the median home price in Colorado at $500,000, I mean, this is tens of thousands of dollars. And we also see penalization in pretty much every other category as well. 79 days was the differential between listings that had no reduction and listings that did for median time on market. Concession prevalence increased 8.6% in January. So listings that had a price reduction also 8.6% more of them paid concessions at some point, and median close prices were $28,000 less. So you get hit from every single angle when you have to have a price reduction. And that's what I want to talk about today is all of the different numbers and stats and graphs that you can share with your potential clients and potential sellers on listing appointments to get them to understand the state of the current market. Number two is speed. Speed is money. The first week, listings that sell within the first week are just categorically different from listings that don't sell in the first week. Here's what I mean by that. We can see the concession prevalence curve. And again, I've showed this before, but it's actually even higher from January than a lot of the numbers from last year. 50% of listings that close in 7 days had concessions. That peaks at over 71% for listings that take 2 to 4 weeks to sell and stays around 70% for pretty much all listings. Same goes for the median net close price to original list price. In fact, it is 99.2% for listings that sell in the first week. After that, it just continually goes down all the way down to if your listing is sitting for 6 months, the median net to original list price ratio is 86.5%. That's a 13.5% difference between what sellers are originally asking and what they're eventually getting on the bottom line. So how do we frame this to sellers? Well, it is incredibly important to price it right up front. We can combine, the data that we have for price reductions and the data that we have for time on market and say the only way we're going to avoid price reductions and excess time on market, which is going to penalize you from every aspect, is pricing it correctly up front. We've also seen a little bit of a affordability, or I like to use the word attainability now, attainability shift. And that is that buyers this January compared to last January actually kind of came down in a price segment. The $400,000 to $500,000 price segment had about a 3% increase in its market share of closings, and the 500 to 600 and 600 to 700 and 700 to 800 all saw decreases. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift from buyers into those lower price points, and it's compressing the middle market, right? We're seeing lost market share in that $500,000 to $700,000 range, which is what we generally would call the middle market, at least here in the Denver metro area. And we're seeing an increase in transactions relative to last January in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. 3 to 4 remained mostly flat at down just about 0.5%, and a significant bump in the sub 300. Again, most of those are going to be condominiums, land, manufactured homes. Taking a quick look at the luxury segment, things have remained very stable in terms of the market share. We saw million plus category up only 0.4%. So relative stability. But again, this is market share. This isn't the absolute number of listings. We'll get into what the actual number of closings is in a minute. But first, I wanted to show you kind of the pile up effect that we're having right now and stale listings. Now, of course, this is January. This is pretty much the end of the quiet season. Things go up from here, but this is what the trough looks like. Uh, this is the market share of closings by how many days it's spent on the market. And we can see that significantly, the most significant change here is that the market share of listings that spent at least 6 months on the market has almost doubled. 9.1% of closings in January spent over 180 days on the market. That is a huge jump from 4.7% last January. We've also seen decreases in the number of homes that are moving quickly, right? Every single category under 2 months decreased 10%, 10%, 7.4%, 13.7%. The chart on the right is kind of or the table on the right is kind of a summary of this idea that the percentage of homes that have lasted for 6 months on the market before closing jumped. 12 months before closing jumped. And of course, the market share of listings with 180 plus days on market has almost doubled. So, what happened in January? Obviously, if you think in terms of closings, things were relatively slow. But we did get indications of future activity. New listings increased about 1% year over year statewide compared to last January. But more importantly, pending listings actually jumped up about 8%. So a lot of these listings that are pending now, assuming that they don't fall out of contract, should close in February and March and April. However, we did not see a lot of action in December and November, which reflects in the decrease of sold listings year over year. So we saw a decline of about 12.4%. We've also seen prices come down quite a bit. We've seen a 3% change in median sale price year over year and a 4.2% decline in average sale price year over year. So January was slow in terms of closing, but again, it shows me that there's really good indications of future activity that is to come. Number one, we've got interest rates in a much, much better position than last year, which is actually surprising to me that we had such a slow January given the interest rate environment we have today. As of this week or last week, 30-year fixed rates, according to Freddie Mac, are 6.09%. The same week last year, we were at 6.87%. Same thing with 15-year, obviously, down from 6.09% last year to 5.44. Wanted to highlight this. NAR says that if mortgage rates drop to 6% regularly, right, over the span of, an average of 6% over a month or 6 weeks, from the 7% that we had at this time last year, that could unlock about 5.5 million additional qualified buyers nationwide, including 1.6 million renters. And we can zoom in a little bit to the Denver metro area and see that that drop in mortgage rates would increase the share of households that qualify at those lower rates by about 4.6%, which brings in about 57,000 more buyers into qualification, but only, not all of them will actually buy a home. That's our job to help tell them why that's a good idea. But we can expect at least about 5,700 additional home sales in the next 12 to 18 months if rates stay at that 6% mark. All right. Now, one other thing I wanted to share with you, a little bit of a bonus here. I wanted to share with you a quick peek at a recent blog post that I had. If you don't follow my blog yet, I will give you the instructions on how to sign up on my newsletter. I took a look at the rental market in the fourth quarter because what's going on with attainability and affordability with buyers is, in my opinion, highly dependent on what's going on with the rental market. Because if buyers or potential or prospective buyers can rent for so much cheaper, it's not a good time to buy for them. So let's take a look at a couple of those numbers. My thesis is that buyer motivation is being hindered by the state of the rental market, especially here in Denver Metro right now. We ended 2025 with a vacancy rate of about 7.6%. That's the highest in 16 years, more than 34,000 units sat empty. Now, the problem is, again, I've brought this up a ton in the past year, but that affordability gap, the buy versus rent differential right now. So the difference between the typical home payment versus the typical rent payment is about 85%. We rank number 7 in the nation for that differential. And we have seen an oversupply of apartments being built. In fact, in Q4, we had 3,177 more units built or vacated than leased. So we have negative net absorption. So just a couple things to think about how we frame the rental market versus the purchase market and how they have some interesting interplay between how a buyer approaches the rental or the for sale market based on what the other one is doing. That is all I have for you this week. Thank you all so much for having me. If you would like to download these slides, you can visit cooperthayer.com/KWRR. I have all of the slides from all of the past 6 months of regional rallies on there, and a button on the top right to subscribe to my newsletter if you would like more in-depth data on apartments. I've got some really interesting articles on concessions, on legislation, things like that. So it's a great place to stay updated. Thank you all so much.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Cooper.
Cooper.